Hi there! Welcome back! I've gotten a lot of really positive feedback on my Satisfactory videos, so I'm going to try and keep making them as I have time. Today, I'm taking a look at Steelton, my steel products factory. It makes all of the beams and pipes needed for this save, other than a few that are used for consumables. It also makes most of the steel ingots. The rest of the ingots are manufactured at coal processing and shipped over via the main train line. The design of Steelton was loosely inspired by the Crystal Palace from the 1851 World's Fair. The Crystal Palace was a Victorian cast iron and glass structure, and it was built with a tall central concourse and two stepped back wings. I wouldn't really consider this building to be Victorian architecture. I would say this is more of an example of modern structuralism, not only in the design, but in its philosophy as well. Structuralism incorporated this notion of what they called structure and infill. The idea is that you create a building with a form that can easily be repurposed or infilled with different functions as its needs change. I talked before in my video on Blue Palm Tech Park about how I sometimes like to think about how the building would have been constructed, and use that to inform the design of the building. And I'm doing that here too. The core of the building is this large central concourse which provides its stability and overall structure. The wings of the building also have slightly smaller vaulted steel supports, and then the walls and the roofs hang between these various steel frameworks. This is the structure. You can imagine how these structures could easily be dismantled and reassembled if the needs of the plant change. And so this is what would be the utilitarian infill. The factory has 4 functional areas, which are arranged in quadrants around the central concourse. I'll talk about this more when I go into detail on how the production is set up. But the design of the building lends itself to this modular quality. If I need to expand the plant in the future, I have some options. For example, filling in the open pit mine area and building another floor above the miners to house additional smelters or foundries. Or if I need to move or reconfigure the way the train stations are set up, I can do this without disrupting the overall coherency in the design of the building. When I started designing this factory, I hadn't used the steel frame foundation pieces much in any of my builds. I knew I wanted to use them at some point so I could get some more experience with them. So what better building to use the steel frames on than the steel factory? When I decided to make those frames the centerpiece of the design, a lot of the structuralist elements kind of fell into place, since they lend themselves to that sort of modularity. As you enter the lobby, there is a sculptural hanging light fixture directly above that acts as a focal point from almost anywhere inside the concourse. It helps to give the interior some visual interest and acts as a guide to and from the main entrance. I've had a few people ask how I made this. I don't use build mods. Part of the fun of Satisfactory for me is figuring out what can be built within the constraints of what the game gives you. So everything that you see in my videos can be built in vanilla Satisfactory. I'm going to hand it over to my real-time narrator self to show how I did this one. The idea behind it isn't that complicated. The tricky part is getting everything to line up right. So the way that I did this is by using a beam, and this frame pillar piece is considered a pillar, and pillars snap to the end of beams. So the trick is to extend a beam from the wall here out to the middle of the room, and get it aligned in such a way that when you snap a pillar to it, it comes out into this orientation. So I'm kind of actually cheating here because I already have this in place. But if you have the beam, you extend it out, rotate it into place. Now, if I snap this piece to it, you'll see it snaps into that orientation. The tricky part is that if this isn't here, and I'm going to actually save that location by dragging out some additional pillars here, but if that's not here, now there's nothing to snap this beam to. So what you actually have to do to make this work is you have to extend from a point over here up through the point that you want the pillar piece to be in, and then connect it to some other point on the other side. And I suspect when I originally did this, I think I put the light fixture in place first and then kind of built the lobby around it, because I'm not exactly sure where the snapping points were to get that to work. So for example, I can start here. I'm in freeform mode. I can extend this through the light somewhere over here. I'll kind of rotate it into position and build that. And then if I snap this to the end of it and I go to zoop mode, you can see I can get it kind of close. This isn't quite exact. And then you just kind of, you delete what you don't need here. And that's how I did it. So I extended from one corner of the room to the other corner of the room. The difficult part, like I said, is actually getting this to line up. So you can see those weren't the exact snap points that I used because this isn't quite coming out exactly at the top the way I wanted it. Like I said, I think the actual snapping points is, there's one that's like back here in the wall somewhere, and then another one that's up here. And then of course, once it's in place, I just didn't touch it because it's actually kind of difficult to get right. I think it took maybe an hour to sort of figure that out, trying different snapping points from here to there and getting everything to line up. But, that's how Satisfactory works. You put on a podcast, you do something silly for an hour, and then when you're done, you're like, hey, I got it to work. So there you go. Overall, I'm pretty happy with the design of this building. I think it has a lot of nice detail, and the frames give it a unique texture that stands in contrast to the usual sort of brutalism that a lot of Satisfactory builds tend to be. Steelton produces all the steel products that are needed for this save, other than for a few consumables like I mentioned earlier. Originally, my steel production was coming from coal processing, which I set up much earlier in the save. But once I started planning for all of the space elevator production at Oasis, it quickly became obvious that I needed a lot more steel. I'll do another video on coal processing sometime, but for various reasons, it made more sense to spin up an entirely new facility for steel than to try and expand that one. The factory is built around the open pit iron mine at the edge of the Rocky Desert. That occupies the northwest quadrant of the factory. Coal is moved over via a direct point-to-point train, which I think is the only one that I'm using in this save. The earlier in a production chain that you have a bottleneck, the greater the impact down the line for subsequent products. So I wanted to make sure that I had an uninterrupted supply of coal, hence the dedicated train. The northeast quadrant of the building is dedicated to the train stations for these imports and exports. Everything that requires steel in this map, again other than the consumables, is all being manufactured at Oasis and Space Elevator Plaza, so all the production from Steelton gets shipped directly to Oasis. The southwest quadrant of the building is dedicated to all the smelting. In order to increase yield, all of the iron ore is smelted into iron ingots first, before being used for steel with a solid steel ingot alt. Then the steel products production happens in the southeast quadrant, with one floor dedicated to beams and one floor dedicated to pipes. Although the factory is making everything that's needed for this map, it's not running at full efficiency. When I built this factory, it was back when I was still planning everything on paper, so I think I made a few mistakes somewhere. Both the coal and the steel ingot imports are significantly backed up. I think the coal is being overproduced, and I never balanced it properly with the amount of ingot I'm making at Steelton. The steel ingots are also backed up, but at the same time, I have some machines that are starved, too. So either the Mark V belts aren't fast enough for what I'm trying to do, or there's a lower tier belt in the pipeline somewhere that's bottlenecking production, or something like that. Okay, actually, you know what? I'm just going to figure it out right now. Let's see what we've got here. So these are being starved, which makes me think that maybe there's a belt somewhere that's the wrong tier, a lower tier belt. But if we go back up to the train station, you can see this train station is completely full, and it actually gets backlogged. But also, these machines are overclocked, and they're getting enough. So somewhere I guess the ingots from the train station are not getting down to the lower floor. So let's see here. So here's where these come out, and these feed into there and into that bank. Oh, so these lines aren't even going down to the lower floor. So that means those are being fed from the foundries. And oh, the foundries are slightly backed up as well. Well then, what is going on? Let me see here. This line is going straight into that bank of 12. Well, let me check the numbers here. Okay, so we've got, what do we have here? 60 out times 3, 4, 5, 6, 12. That's 720. Okay, that should be enough for the belt. And how they're being used. These are 60 in. Oh, I see what I did here. Okay, so these are matched up 1-to-1 with the foundries. Well then, why is this being short? Got this belt coming in. Oh, I see what I did. I split off a little bit more to feed the overclocked constructors on the second floor. Ah, this should be a smart splitter. That's why it's backed up. No, well, okay. Easy fix. Let's see here. And we want this to be overflow. Okay. Yeah, so once that buffer refills, that actually should solve the problem. I think that was it. It was just that needed to be a smart splitter with a priority setting on it. Which means these should all be full. Yeah, okay. And filling up. Excellent. And then the train station should empty faster as well. So I think that'll even everything out. That should work. So there you go. That's how you solve that. I still need to double check all the numbers between Steelton and coal processing, because I still think there are some balance issues there too. But if I wanted to bring this save up to date, that would be pretty far down on the list of priorities. Despite those issues with balancing and efficiency, this factory has been a really solid producer for me. It's always been reliable and produces enough beam and pipe for everything needed downstream. The design was really fun to put together, and I think the straightforward layout of functions in their quadrants works really well. If I do decide to rebalance or expand it in the future, the way that it's built really lends itself to being repurposed. So this works really well for me, both in its present form and for whatever I might need it for in the future. Thanks for coming along on the tour.